It should, hold on. 1 minute and we should be streaming. I think we're good. We're streaming.
All right, thanks a lot. And good afternoon to the Baltimore County Senate delegation briefing with Baltimore County Public Schools. I'd like to welcome our superintendent, Dr. Williams. Also on this at this briefing is Dr. Mariam Yarbrough, our deputy superintendent, Ms. Mildred Charlie Green, Chief of Staff, Dr. Michael Zarkin, Chief of School Climate and Safety, Dr. McComas, who's our Chief Academic Officer, Ms. Anderson, Chief of Human Resources, Mr. Dixit, the Executive Director of Facilities, Ms. Somerville, who's the Director of Health Services, Mr. Bazemore, the Director of Governmental Relations, and Ms. Seabolt, who is the Senior Executive Assistant to the Chief of Staff. I'm hoping I got everyone that was on this list. And with that, again, I'd like to welcome you, Dr. Williams, and just so that you're aware, on the call at this briefing, we have Senator West, Salling, Lamb. A number of us are still in hearings, so they will be coming in and out periodically as time permits. But the floor is yours, and thank you all for joining us.
So good afternoon, everyone. I do have a brief presentation I want to share and then open up for questions or comments. I do want to say it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon and to share celebrations, key initiatives, and the evidence of our strategic plan, our compass, our pathway forward. I also want to thank you for your flexibility in rescheduling. I had a major conflict on the original date, so I thank you for your flexibility. I appreciate the work that you all do every day. I think Ms. Seabolt will be, or someone will be sharing the slides. Yes. Okay, next one, please. So this system snapshot provides a context for today's conversation. So this snapshot is actually brand new. And so we're excited about providing this one-pager, as I like to call, and it clearly shows the rich and dynamic makeup of our system. We serve students of a variety of backgrounds and needs across a vast geographical landscape. Our 175 schools are open for in-person learning and provide students high-quality teaching and learning, social emotional support, and positive relationships to foster student success. Graduation rate for the class of 2020 stands at 88.5%. The state average was at 86.75%, an increase above the previous year. And in spite of the challenges brought by the pandemic, we will continue to maintain a high graduation rate. And please note that, and many of you attended our graduations last spring, the class of 2021 graduates amassed more than $185 million in college scholarships. And additionally, Baltimore County Public School staff have been recognized at the state level as the Teacher of the Year, Support Professional of the Year, and Assistant Principal of the Year. Some additional facts: BCPS has 26 Maryland Blue Ribbon schools and 23 National Blue Ribbon schools. 51.5% of our high school students have taken a CTE course, representing the highest rate in the state. 11,000 student athletes take part in the high school varsity and JV athletics program. 3,200 students participate in our middle school athletics program, and BCPS students represent 138 countries and speak 147 languages. So as a system, we have much to be proud of. So while we are celebrating and about who we are and what we have accomplished together, we know that our efforts are to heal, rebuild, and recover must be ongoing. So in the midst of this next normal, to be astounded by the resilience of our students, staff, and communities, they have worked tirelessly to meet the needs of and support our students. And we must acknowledge that the needs are significant. As we have been widely reported, students across the nation have been negatively impacted by interrupted learning. Our staffing shortages have really strained our school operations, and the most recent Omicron surge has required yet another shift for students, staff, and families. In recognition of student and staff need this year, we have remained focused on 4 key goals: accelerated learning, promoting social emotional wellness, increasing data literacy, and establishing standards of excellence. In alignment with current best practice recommendations from our experts about post-pandemic learning approaches, we have implemented accelerated learning to counteract the impact of unfinished learning. Accelerated learning is a newer evidence-based strategy that requires students to consistently receive grade level materials, tasks, and assignments, along with appropriate scaffolds that make the work accessible. More specifically, leaders and teachers will focus on filling in those most critical gaps, not in isolation, at the moment they are needed. Next slide, please. We rely on measures to gauge student learning. Indicators of progress includes our marking period grades and standardized tests. Just recently, I reported to the board about our fall administration of the measures of academic progress, or MAP, which show elementary and middle school performance in math and language arts, really exceeded per pandemic measures. That said, we know that some students require additional supports. We are looking forward to our second marking period grades, as well as other assessments to adjust and provide students supports to meet the needs of our school communities. The expansion of our data system has helped us to inform the daily work of teaching and learning. This expanded access provides leading data that is used in our schools so that teachers and leaders can work to plan for instruction to meet the needs of students. At the central office level, it allows us to monitor the progress of students in the spirit of continuous improvement. Supporting the social, emotional well-being of students and staff means putting in place effective measures to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on teaching and learning. We are seeing very encouraging trends in our COVID case rates. As of last week, the number of employees and staff, employees and students reporting COVID infections dropped by 60% from the week ending January 14th to the week ending January 21st. This drop mirrors a steep decrease in COVID infections in our county. Shortly after we returned to school, Baltimore County COVID case rate was approximately 1,500 cases per 100,000 residents over 7 days. As of this past Monday, January 24th, the county's case rate has dropped to 420 cases per 100,000. Although this is very encouraging news, we need to put those numbers in perspective. A case rate of 420 still places Baltimore County in CDC's highest transmission category, which is a rate of 100 or more. Next slide. Our mitigation plan is focused on preserving and protecting in-person learning. One of our expert consultants from the University of Maryland and Johns Hopkins, they remind us regularly that schools should be the first to open and the last to close. And our mitigation is working. A few updates on our efforts. Our website has been updated with many resources to help parents and staff know when to come to school and when to stay home. We even added a calendar to help people know how to calculate the length of their quarantines. We continue to use a layered testing approach to support safety. Recently, we distributed home test kits to all interested staff and students. We also have expanded our student athletic testing programs to include students who participate in after-school extracurricular events. In response to community concerns about the effectiveness of cloth masks, we have ordered enough KN95 masks to provide 6 masks to every interested student and staff member. And finally, to preserve in-person learning, our central office staff have been deployed to support schools during the Omicron surge. This is another good news slide. As you have heard and seen on our website, we are using a database approach to limit the number of schools that must close due to COVID. Thanks to the drop in rates, we only have one program that remains in a virtual mode. This is our infant and toddlers program that provides services in the home to many vulnerable children who are under 5, not eligible for the vaccine, and often have complicated health problems. As staff have recovered from COVID, we have been able to safely reopen all other schools using existing staff that is supplemented by our central office staff. Our schools continue to take proactive measures that foster safe, secure, and supportive environments. The pandemic-related trauma experienced by families continues to manifest itself in an uptick of disruptive behaviors. We are not alone. School systems across the nation are facing similar challenges. In fact, the Associate Director of Center for Childhood Resilience notes that the return to full-time in-person learning has resulted in a prolonged adjusted period. So our efforts to allow schools to focus on teaching and learning include virtual town hall meetings by zone, the deployment of central office staff to schools to address identified needs, the use of alternative educational options for students in need of additional support, our own Baltimore County Public Schools Student Council-led campaigns, our parent university presentations, our collaboration with the Parent Teacher Association Council of Baltimore County and their meetings, and a multi-district roundtable session where participants will collaborate and work together to identify innovative solutions. So the nature of trauma means that there are no quick fixes to these challenges. We all need to work together to minimize distractions and, of course, problem solve to ensure optimal learning environments for our students. We have taken steps to demonstrate our appreciation for the hardworking members of Team BCPS who have gone above and beyond in challenging times. In recognition of these tireless efforts, we have provided staff with release time for well-deserved rest and an opportunity to tend to personal well-being. As part of our ongoing staff appreciation efforts, our central office volunteers are sharing the gift of time with schools throughout this current school year. Volunteers will help in a variety of ways, including bus and lunch duty, class and front office coverage, and assistance to our school leaders. We've also provided retention bonus options for all members of Team BCPS. Our current staffing challenge is filling vacancies. We are experiencing, as I shared before, a nationwide shortage of employees, particularly in transportation and teaching. Using our ERSA funds, I allocated additional English and math teachers for all secondary schools to reduce class size and support accelerated learning. However, many of these positions remain unfilled. Have also increased staffing for paraprofessionals at the elementary school level to support small group instruction during the implementation of the additional 15 minutes of class time in all schools. Our Human Resources team has hosted 141 virtual and face-to-face recruitment events since July 1 of 2021. we have hired 1,355 employees as a result of these efforts, including 790 new teachers. We have also worked to streamline our hiring process internally. The Division of Human Resources has reduced barriers to pre-employment medical requirements and background checks. The division is exploring additional efficiencies. And additionally, we continue to respond to the substitute crisis in a variety of ways, including deploying central office staff to support classrooms, providing recruitment and retention bonuses, and exploring the use of a temporary teacher substitute agency to fill gaps as a short-term solution. In light of the current challenges, we have renewed focus on people and progress. On January 11th, I submitted my proposed FY23 operating budget to the Board of Education. The Board of Education is currently conducting their work sessions on the FY23 budget, and my hope that this process will be completed by February 22nd. So I look forward to supporting and to ensure the support for BCPS to ensure the very best is happening for Team BCPS. And so with that, I thank you for this brief presentation. And at this time, my team and I are available to answer any questions or any comments that the delegation may have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I see that our chair has joined. Do you? No, go ahead. All right. With that,
Dr. Williams, I just want to say hi. I have to go back. I kind of snuck out of, we're still on bill hearings, and then we have to vote. So I'm going to let Senator Sidner keep taking over the meeting. And I know there's some very important questions people have. So
sure.
Thank you again for your time and all your staff for that presentation.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. And I believe you all will have a copy of this presentation.
Oh, good, good, good.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, I saw Senator Salling and then Senator West.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Vice Chair. First of all, I want to thank the superintendent, the opportunity and the time and all the information. It's so important that we have this information and we able to share that. And I want to thank you also for sending that too. Just to let you know, Superintendent, I've met with every principal in my district. I've met with them, opportunities, some face-to-face, but the rest virtual. And we were able to have some great conversations. And one of the biggest conversations that we had, and maybe one of the problems, is attendance. And you probably have heard about this. Attendance with some of the kids, some of the students, but trying to get parents to participate in some of the programs for the students in our schools. And I didn't know if there was anything that Baltimore County is looking into, or if we could help that in some way so we can get the parents more involved in education, because to me, they're a vital, important part of the puzzle. And we really need them. And it's just one, I have one more follow-up and that's all. But if you could answer that, I really.
So thank you for that. I have been monitoring our attendance rate every day since we came back from the winter break, and we've been monitoring, and now we're about 92% of our students attending. Very strong at the elementary, equally strong at the middle school, and sometimes, depending on the day, the high school will waver. And that was one of my desires when I mentioned the collaboration, is working not only with our principals, but also with the PTA to get that information out. We have a plethora of resources and supports, not only for the social emotional well-being of our students, but the academic piece. So we're trying to get that information out to our families in a variety of ways, as well as in multiple languages. We have been able to hire some folks in our communication office who are able to speak more than one language. And so we want to be cognitive of the diversity To your point, we realized we have to do a different way of getting to our working families and working with our schools, because many times our principals and leaders have some great ideas of how to reach out, but attendance is important. I'm working with the state superintendent and other colleagues as we look at our attendance and monitoring and trying to make sure our students have access to what we're offering every day in our classrooms. But our board has made that one of their board goals. We will be presenting to the board in a couple of months about our attendance. Be happy to share that report once we finalize that. But we know we thought the attendance would be lower than it was because of the surge. But we were kind of impressed that kids were showing up. Kids were showing up, and as you well know, that's half the battle. If we can get you in the building, get you in the classroom with a stellar teacher, we're gonna make magic happen. So we're watching the attendance, and again, we have been hovering around 90%, 92%, which is very positive in spite of all that's been going on for the last 2 years.
Thank you very much. And if you don't mind, one more, just follow up real quick. I've met with some of the safety team in my district and had an opportunity to sit down and have talks with them and had 2 meetings with them already. One of the problems we had in Chesapeake High School, as you know, and a couple other schools. And the problems were literally the assaults, the bullying, the cyberbullying, and some of the problems that we have in our schools that we don't have enough SROs. I'm just wondering, we've talked about that briefly and we know we have a problem with that. Is this being addressed? And if it is, and again, if it's something more we can do, let us know. But I appreciate an answer for that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so thank you for that. We do, I have regular conversations with Chief Hyatt and our executive director over safety, collaborates with Sergeant Thomas, who's over the SROs. We find that is a wonderful partnership, because we're finding that the SROs really build strong relationships with students. I think to your point, it goes to another element in why we did our town hall meetings, because sometimes things were happening outside of school, coming into the school, and really trying to get to our parents to educate and to really check. You said something about this social media. There's that issue that checking phones, checking kids' social media accounts. I will tell you, the team did an outstanding job of sharing those resources and just some things that families and parents can watch for. But we are in collaboration. We're happy that we have that partnership with the SROs and our police. I think we'll continue to have those conversations about additional resources. Right now in my budget, we put forth additional FTEs for counselors and social workers. And we know that many of our police officers will serve in a quasi role like that in terms of counseling. But I understand your point. I understand some of our larger schools. I understand some of those schools that are situated in communities. Those are the conversations that we have been having. And the county executive and I are part of a Baltimore County STAT program where we look at what's happening in our communities, whether it's health services, housing, and education, just kind of having some dialogue about what might be needed in certain pockets of our county. So again, the work is going to continue, and that collaboration and requesting additional resources, again, will also continue as well. But we recognize your concern.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate that.
All good. All right, thank you. Senator West.
Thank you, Senator Sidner. Superintendent Williams, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So when this meeting was first called, I submitted 2 questions because I didn't want to blindside you here asking hostile questions without giving you time to prepare for them. So I assume that you received the two questions that I submitted. Let me indicate as I start that my questions relate to Towson and Delaney High Schools. The vast majority of the families in my legislative district send their children to those two high schools. I can't tell you how much bitterness there is among my constituency at this point, because the rug was pulled out from under them with Towson and Delaney high schools. So let me ask two questions relating to Towson and Delaney. First of all, Mr. Dixit, I see you're here. You might want to make yourself visible. Turn your video on if you're listening to this, because I'd rather ask you the question than the superintendent. It appears
Mr. Dixon, or I know he's there.
There he is.
Okay.
Okay. So this past September, I think it was September, I listened remotely to a work session of the county school board in which you spent virtually the entire evening repeatedly telling the school board that if they opted for a replacement high school for Towson and a replacement high school for Delaney, the IAC would penalize Baltimore County something in the range of $220 million. I took copious notes of your statement, which you repeated not once, but twice. So you spent several hours before the school board purveying this tale that if they decided to opt for a replacement high school in Towson and Delaney, it would cost the county school system $220 million in state funds. I then called my good friend Ed Casemeyer, who is the chairman of the board of the IAC, and asked whether or not that was true. And he looked into it and got back to me and said, no, it's not true. Not only is it not true, he said, we have never penalized any county in the state for deciding to build a replacement school. He said, you needn't worry. Baltimore County is not going to lose $220 million if it decides to build replacement high schools for Towson and Delaney. Not satisfied with that, I then called Bob Gorel, who's the executive director of the IAC, and posed the same question to him and got the same answer. And my last question to him was, if under some circumstance the IAC were to decide to penalize Baltimore County for asking for replacement high schools for Towson and Delaney, would you give the county school board the chance to make another decision? And his response, without batting an eye, was, of course. So, Mr. Dixit, how do you explain the fact that you spent that entire evening relating an untrue statement to the Baltimore County School Board?
So good evening, Senator West. I know you have stated this several times. So first thing, I want to thank you for your advocacy for Towson and Delaney and all the support that you have provided to Baltimore County Public Schools.
That's my job.
Also, I want to state that we are making every effort that we can to improve all schools, including Towson and Delaney. The problem continues to be the resources that we have available to us and the needs out there. So that's one thing that I wanted. So we have, and Dr. Williams included, we totally support each and every kid and every school. And as director of facilities, you will never hear from me that I'll turn down a new school for any neighborhood. So I want you to be assured that we support new schools, and if it is up to us, we'll replace every school in the system because it'll be more efficient and it'll provide better environment for kids. The challenge we have that there's only so many resources available, and we try to optimize the county resources to attract maximum funds. As I have shared with the board and before, that all of those resources for the regulations of IAC and state and the COMAR, and I have responded to your questions in writing, and I stand by my presentation. That was not a single effort just from me, but a compiled effort from team and reviewed several times. So if you follow their procedures, so there are two different comparisons that we have to make: renovation versus new construction. And their regulations are clear that feasibility studies, if they indicate that renovation is more cost effective and then you go ahead and do replacement anyway, that you may be penalized, or they may only fund for renovation. And it is in COMAR, it is in administrative guidelines, and we have shared that in writing with you. Saying that, the best analogy that I can give you, that if we are driving in a 25-mile zone, and that's what it is, and somebody decides to go in 45, 60 miles, and person is not penalized, that person is still in violation of that 25-mile zone. So we hope that we are able to submit it, and we hope that at some point we can improve Towson and Delaney to the maximum extent possible. As a matter of fact, Dr. Williams and I and a couple of our team members here, we are constantly trying, including today, meeting with the county executive to see if we can get additional funding from county and state to improve the schools, whether it is renovation or whether it's new replacement, and we'll continue to do so. So you have our assurance that the purpose of that presentation was in no way against any school, including Towson and Delaney, and that our efforts will continue to make improvements there, whatever we can, and whatever we can get funding for.
Well,
I hope I answered your question.
Thank you for your answer. I will say that as I watched the hearing and heard you that evening, you did not use the words may be penalized. You used the words will be penalized.
Well,
it seems to me that if you'd made a simple telephone call down to the IAC, you would have learned in 30 seconds that your hypothetical supposition that the school system would be penalized was totally erroneous. And it saved the school board several hours of your analysis, which was completely fallacious.
Well, the analysis was not fallacious, Senator. If you compare the amount that will be used in renovation and compare it to a new school, it is not uncommon to be 100 million difference. And not only that, the difference also is a complex method of funding. The difference is in the support that county provides. So it's the county share that will be included. And if you look at that county share, that'll be used for any one school. It can be used, we lose the leveraging capability of that county share to get construction funds for all projects, including Towson, Delaney, and other projects.
I disagree with you on that. That's not true.
Well, we can talk about it in more detail. I can send you whatever information is there. I have already shared IAC guidelines saying all of that. You know that if you submit a project and you keep appealing for, there's always the possibility of getting more funds. And at no point did I say that we are not going to appeal. We are going to try to get the maximum funds for Towson, for Delaney, and for all schools. We are going to expedite.
Let me shift from you then over to the superintendent for my second question. So that evening, the school board voted for a replacement school for Towson and a replacement school for Delaney. And that information was duly conveyed to the IAC. There was no penalty assessed. They would consider that after they got a letter from the county executive saying he supported it. And belying the promises he made during his campaign, the county executive sent a letter saying he would not support it. But subsequently, there have been more developments, and I'm trying to figure out exactly what's going on. The county school system, the superintendent, issued a request for proposals suggesting that for a new Towson High School design, and suggested that the cost of the new school would be between $90 and $100 million. Almost simultaneously, the county executive sent a request to the IAC for $150 million for Towson High School. So is this a situation where the school system is not talking to the county executive? Is it a situation where wires got crossed? Or is it a situation where minds were changed between the county executive's suggestion that it was going to cost $150 million and the county school system's prognosis that it would be between $90 and $100 million?
So thank you for that. What we do know is that there was more of a review of the feasibility, just understanding And as Mr. Dixon shared, we are constantly having conversations with the county executive and his side of the shop about what we can do with what the proposed recommendation, or I'm sorry, it was actually recommended and approved by the board in terms of their priority about the buildings and that priority order. So I would just say what we started up again, these ongoing conversations with the county executive. So we had our first meeting today. We have some follow-up. And so I would just say stay tuned as we provide additional updates about what this will look like. We did have a little lull between the winter break and what was happening as we were returning from winter break in January. But I think there will be some additional updates to the board and more conversation with our side and the county executive side. As Mr. Dixon said, we just had one today. We have some follow-up that we need to provide. And so as Mr. Dixon shared, and we want every school to have the best, and our county executive has actually spent many times, hours with us looking through the My iPass report, as well as our board. We have just started up more conversations about how to problem solve and how to message things in the near future. So I would just say stay tuned. We had a very productive meeting, and we'll have some other meetings in the near future.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent, for encouraging me to stay tuned. I intend to observe that advice. I will run for re-election this fall. I hope I win. And if I do, you will find me unrelenting on this issue for the next 5 years. Thank you.
So Dr. Williams, there was a specific question from Senator about the dollar. If I have your approval, I can answer that question.
Sure.
So Senator, there has been some confusion in the part of some members of your community, and I admire their advocacy. The request that we have submitted to state is for the entire project, what we call project cost. When we look for an architect, we are looking for an architect who has the capability of designing a construction piece of that project. So the $100 million or $110 million number that you saw, it is to provide architect magnitude of the project so that he can have the right amount of staffing, he or she. So it has nothing to do with the final cost, because at this point, nobody knows what the final cost, construction cost of the project will be. Because
you paid a lot of money for a feasibility study, which showed the cost of a replacement school would be $141 million.
Yeah, but the feasibility.
Raise questions as to why you told the architects that it would be between $90 and $100 million.
Because the construction cost that is within the application for project funding amounts to $100 and $120 million. And we still don't know what the final cost will be unless it is bid. So the intent here in that number is to provide a magnitude of the project to the architect that's going to be interested in designing it. And it is in no way in increasing or decreasing the cost of construction. So I just wanted to share that clarification.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams, for giving me the opportunity to share that.
Yep.
All right. We have a question from Senator Hedelman, who is still in committee.
Okay.
She asked, what is the school system's plan to recruit for all of the current openings, as well as all of the new openings in Dr. Williams' budget? All of the LEAs around us are vying for the same pool of people.
Yeah, so I know Senator Hedelman is not here. That is our challenge in Maryland, is that our higher eds are not producing the number of staff members to fill our vacancies. And so what we do, and what every system is doing, is going outside of Maryland. We can do a lot of things now virtually to try to recruit and to interview. We have done that. Based on the pandemic, we realize we have to be just as aggressive as some of our neighboring districts. One way is that we are looking at our salaries the blueprint for Maryland's future is giving us that baseline to look at the teacher salary and starting salaries. We're looking at salaries as an incentive, but also being very aggressive to going out on a regular basis. Sometimes when you think about hiring, you're thinking about once the budget has been approved around the spring, and then we start those interview processes. Our chief of human resources is on the line, and her team. We have been doing recruitment efforts all year, and we have done some strategic recruitment efforts for some of those unique positions that may be challenging to hire. We definitely look at our December and January graduates. But that's the recruitment piece and retention. We also are starting earlier. We're working with our high school students. We have Teacher Academy of Maryland, where we have students who aspire to be teachers. We're increasing those numbers to start planting those seeds early, and giving out scholarships for our seniors who are graduating and looking at teaching as a major. In addition, we're working with our paraeducators to get them certified. Those types of programs, we're finding great success looking at those who have worked for us for X number of years as a paraeducator and having them to go back to school to get their certification. So we're looking at high school students, we're looking at our current staff, growing our own program, and we're looking at our recruitment efforts to go out there and tap those sources out there. But I'm gonna just pause to see if Ms. Anderson wanna add to my response.
No, Dr. Williams, you covered every aspect of recruitment. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right.
And one more thing, if I may,
Sure,
we also
sure.
encouraging our staff to get multiple certifications. Special ed is one, ESOL. So those are good strategies that you may come in as a general ed teacher, but also to get that certification or that master's degree so they can now work with a concentrated group of students. And so we're looking at a variety of ways. And one more thing, I just thought about one more thing, looking at our retirees and those who may have had a career not in education, that there's some folks who want now to change their career and become teachers. And so we really have been looking at a variety of ways, but more specifically, I think that partnership with our higher ed, they know the needs. They're working just as hard as we are at the pre-K to 12 level, but that partnership with our higher eds and to bring a much more diverse population into Baltimore County is tapping into our historically Black colleges and universities. We have several right in the state of Maryland, but we also are branching out outside of Maryland to tap in to those schools of education and making those relationships with the Dean of Education, giving them information about our program, and just opening up doors for those opportunities as well to recruit from our HBCUs. Ms. Anderson, I see you're glowing. I didn't know if you wanted to add anything.
No, but I do want to highlight positioning BCPS as an attractive school system is very important as we look to recruit across the country. So we have begun establishing those relationships and positioning this school system as one of the largest school systems in the United States. And so looking at our benefits and highlighting those areas where we may be able to attract those individuals across the country. Thank you, Dr. Williams.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing how none of my colleagues, I believe, have their hand raised for any other questions, I had just a few.
Okay.
One question that I had in watching some of the board meetings, I've seen some parents and other citizens raise concerns about the teaching of critical race theory. So I wanted to give you that opportunity to kind of talk about what our civics and history curriculum are within Baltimore County Public Schools?
So we don't teach CRT. We have a curriculum committee as a board. And when we are looking at materials or programs, we vet it through our board. Our goal is to provide as many resources for our students. You know, our students come with a varied background and experiences. And because we're diverse, we want to open up the opportunity for options and choices for our students. And so I know that's been a question, and for other large systems where you hear some of the public comments, but what we've received support from our board, and Ms. Dr. Boswell McComas may be on the call. We do a good job of vetting our curriculum. We do a good job of meeting with our social studies teachers and looking at what we're teaching and how we're teaching. We give them some flexibility because students, as we matriculate into the high school grades, students want to have options. Students want to talk more about the rich history that they may have based on their own culture. We want to kind of celebrate, but our goal is to provide options and to kind of challenge the thinking. But I'm gonna ask Dr. Boswell McComas to add a little bit more context around specifically the curriculum, because that's definitely under her shop.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Williams, and thank you, Senator Sidnor, for the opportunity to clarify, because there is a great deal of misunderstanding around that particular issue. And just so that everyone knows, CRT is a university level curriculum. It is not a K-12 curriculum. And so that's the first thing. And thank you, Dr. Williams, for helping to clarify that right out the gate. What we do teach are the standards, and our standards in Maryland, which are college and career ready standards, do identify standards 2.0, standards 5.0, and 6.0 in our social studies curriculums. And they really talk about teaching students about multiple perspectives that are historically grounded and are multidisciplinary in their approach, right? So that we're looking at multiple narratives and knowledge that reflects the diversity and commonality of the human experience. And you can go to MSDE and look up the standards for yourself, and they're quite lengthy, and I won't bore you with all of the particular standards. But the bottom line is, it really is our responsibility to ensure that our students understand how to read, analyze, communicate, and discuss multiple perspectives, right? Because we are a pluralistic community, a pluralistic nation. And it's important that our curriculum, whether it's literature or social studies, does not reflect just one group of people, because that is not, in fact, who we are as a society. So thank you for the opportunity. I hope that helped, Dr. Williams.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Given the number of laws that are being implemented across the country to stop history from being taught was concerning, and I heard some of that same rhetoric at some of the school board meetings. So I just thought it would be a good opportunity.
Thank you.
Since you all don't respond there, to kind of set the record straight. The second question that I had, I'm curious, what is the process for distributing information about the Maryland Legislative Page Program? When I've looked on different schools' websites about the opportunity for students, different schools promote it and others you can't find it anywhere. And I wanted to make certain that our high school students across the county are aware of this really unique program that we have in partnership with you all.
Yes, sir. Dr. Williams, is it okay if I?
Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you, sir. So great. And as someone who's a former page in Annapolis, I agree with you. It is a phenomenal opportunity for our students to really engage up close and personal and see the legislative process and all that goes into it. So what we do is our Office of Social Studies annually distributes the resources and application process and to schools through a variety of ways. One, we have a News Hub, which is like our weekly internal way of sending out communication and opportunities that goes out to schools. We also communicate monthly and very routinely with our department chairs at our high schools. This is really like our key liaison, if you will, between the Office of Social Studies for these types of opportunities. And then, of course, department chairs work closely with their group of teachers, which could be, could range in size from a small team of 3 to 5 people to a large department that might have 10 or 12 individuals. And then those teachers really work with their students around identifying students that demonstrate, the interest in pursuing the opportunity to serve as a page, and then also the preparation and helping them understand what's involved, how to complete the process and move forward. So we'll continue to try to, I can work with our communications team to try to get that posted on our website as well.
Great.
And just to add, Senator Sidnor, we have a new director of communication, and a part of her kind of 90-day entry plan is to look at our processes, and one of it is the way in which we communicate. And there was a survey, and I believe the survey may be wrapping up now. But I think what's key here is getting to our students, because what may work for us as the adults, it may not be appropriate or, cool for our students. And so working with our student leaders, our student council to figure out how else can we get that information out there. And that's not just with this wonderful program, but other programs. It's just, sometimes it could be communication overload. I have found in my years of service, sometimes we give out too much information and folks like, oh, well, they just sending another message out. How do we strike that balance? So that's the role of our directors, to try to strike that balance. But what's key, what I'm hearing you say, how do we make sure our students have access? And sometimes we got to think kind of like how our students would think. Where would they go for that kind of information? But Dr. Bosworth-McComas really said that our social studies department chairs are the liaisons, our counselors as well. I must put a plug for our counselors. They're always reaching kids to try to get them involved in different programs and activities. And so there's different ways that we can do as adults, but kind of looking at some of that survey data and actually working with our student leaders to figure out what other ways do we want to go about getting to our students that may be a little bit faster. I know kids are always on social media. Sometimes that works in our favor, sometimes it does not. But that's just one means that we're kind of exploring.
Okay, no, I believe you all had sent some information out about your stock market program, and it got out. I made certain to put it in a community newsletter because it's a great opportunity for families and things. So I mean, even if just getting it out so that parents of students maybe they look at it with different eyes than what the children may encourage their participation. And the last question that I had, and I do see Senator West, and I'll come to you afterwards, is with regards to the December 28th Maryland Inspector General's report. In that report, and I'm reading from the background, it says the OIGE initiated an investigation based on the complaint alleging members of the Baltimore County Public School Board of Education had violated Maryland education law and county code pertaining to the expenditure of funds to obtain legal services. The complaint further alleged members of the BCPS BOE continued this practice knowing they were in violation of state and county law and established BCPS procurement practices. Except under limited exceptions, the Inspector General may not disclose the identity of the source of the complaint or information provided. As you all may know, I had introduced a piece of legislation this year to ensure that the Baltimore County School Board didn't have to go to the county outside counsel We were the only school board in the state that had that prohibition against the school system being able to hire outside counsel. And a news reporter, Mr. Lee, had reached out to me and began asking questions about that particular piece of legislation. And I discussed that with him. And then I think maybe within a day or two, the newspaper article broke about this particular Inspector General's report, which I would not have known anything. In reading it, I certainly was not aware of all of the surrounding circumstances that kind of looked as if I had a piece of legislation that was meant to cure what this IG report was talking about. But with that said, what I'm wondering, I believe, according to the article, it says that there's a response from the county school board that's due on January 31st. I'm going to assume that with it being prior to January 31st, a response hasn't been made yet, or has it been?
So a response has been made from the school board.
Is it possible for that response to be shared with this delegation?
I'm happy to go back, and since it came from Ms. Henn as our chair and the board, I can easily inquire about that response and the availability to the delegation because it came from them, and I was a part of the creation of some of the responses. I would rather go back to the chair and vice chair. There was a news article just today about it.
Okay.
So I believe if it's not already posted, Senator Sindor.
So it may be already out there.
It may already be out there.
Okay.
That I don't know, but please allow me just to follow up because I think it may already be out there, but let me just confirm that.
Look, thank you very much. Senator West.
Thank you, Senator Sidner. I think the reporter who wrote the article in this morning's paper clearly had a copy of the response, so it must be out there.
Thank you. I was not aware of this article, so I'll look for it. Thank you.
I just want, because I asked some hostile questions earlier, I wanted to finish up with a compliment. I'm a history and I'm civ major from my college, and I think that the county school system is doing exactly the right thing with CRT. Teach the history, teach the facts, and encourage the kids then to use their own minds to draw interpretations from the facts, and they can argue amongst themselves as to what the proper interpretation ought to be, but don't spoon feed it to them. So I think you're doing exactly the right thing, and I compliment you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Senator West.
All right. Were there any other questions from our delegation? Senator Lamb? Senator Klausmeyer? Senator Klausmeyer?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just want to say again, thank you so much. And Senator Sidnor, thank you for filling in for me. I appreciate it. Looked like you did a great job. And
Thank you.
I look forward to that newspaper article and find out the answer. So thank you. And thank all of your staff. I mean, you really had a ton there, which is always helpful.
Yeah.
So to help answer all these questions, because there were a variety of questions. So sorry I had to jump in and jump out.
No, we thank you for all that you do and the time. And I know this is a difficult time while you're in session, but we appreciate this opportunity to have a dialogue with you. So
yes, and I hope
thank you, Tony Bazemore, for your constant
Tony, thank you.
Work and support of everyone. Thank you, Tony. There he is.
But I hope we can continue this, and if we have other questions that we can just count on you, getting back to us, whether we email them or write them or call you or whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all.
Right.
All right. Thank you all.
All right. Have a good evening.
Y'all have a good
too.
evening.
Okay.
Thanks,
Good night.
Thank you, Dr. Williams.
briefing. Thank you all.